Good afternoon and welcome to this session. So today we're going to be talking about a collaborative approach to SDN and NFV validation with OpenStack. All right, so I got to admit it's a bit of a long title, but ultimately and in essence what I'm really trying to achieve here is to give you a newer and maybe a better perspective on how to best verify your SDN and NFV and OpenStack design, so those solutions can really sustain the stress of production-grade environment, right? So that's really in a nutshell what I'm going to try to achieve here. So I would like to start with a refresher on what are the benefits of SDN and NFV, right? And as we all understand it, really, SDN is all about decoupling the control plane from the data plane, right? And taking that control plane and migrating it outside of the network into a single centralized point of contact, right? So that's a bit of a technical description here. So I think that, more interestingly, what's really important to remember is this, right? At the end of the day, this SDN controller, this centralized point of control, really exposes an API that enables an application, a software application, to really steer the traffic into the network, right? That's one key. But more importantly, steer the traffic based on the logic, the business logic that's residing within your application, software application, right? So what you really need to remember is that now you've got a tying between your business goals, your business logic, and how to drive the traffic into the networking infrastructure. For NFV, NFV is really a technology that, summarized to its core, is really an evolution of the form factor for network services, right? And what's really great about NFV, network function virtualization, is that now you can instantiate and you can create, you can actually bring up, you can consume those network services as software application, right? So I just used the term software application 2 times, right, in the context of SDN and NFV. And that's going to be key, throughout the course of this presentation. Just remember this. Yes, both NFV and SDNs do promote a culture of innovation because, in a nutshell, right, it's much more easy to innovate and experiment with software, right? So we just talked a little bit about the benefits of those 2 technologies. Well, let's take a look at the challenges now, right? And here, we all recognize that both SDN and NFV are actually very disruptive technologies, right? And I'm not going to paint a rosy picture here because it's not going to do justice to the topic. Yes, there are challenges, and you can see that, represented in this slide. If there is one challenge that I would like to highlight here, then I would actually highlight the fact that out there today, there is more than $40 billion installed based on non-SDN compatible gear, right? So it's really a big concern that has been, pretty much overlooked and ignored up to now, but I think it's probably one of the most important ones. So as well, keep that in mind, because it's really important to understand how you can have coexistence between your non-SDN compatible gear and the SDN optimized solution. All right, so which now really begs the question, right? Is SDN more hype than reality? So let's take a look at the SDN Hype Cycle from the Gartner, right? And today we are at the top of this curve, right? So we've got no choice but to slide into the valley of disillusion, right? So which really brings you to this question. Is anyone actually doing SDN, right? So, well, there is actually, beyond the hype, lots of real interest into SDN, right? Because the SDN value proposition is very credible and very tangible to many company, organizations, and businesses. So, instead of focusing on the question, is anyone actually doing SDN? I think that, basically a better question would be, would anyone experiment with SDN, right? That's a key question. It's all about the experimentation. And, if you stretch this a little bit more, if you project yourself in the future, this industry in the future, then I would say that an even better question is this. Can you take the risk not to experiment with SDN today? That's the bottom line question if you want to stay abreast and stay competitive in the marketplace. Okay? All right, so let me dig into the SDNNFV dev test implication, right? And SDN is really a game changer, right? A game changer because it's shifting the paradigm from this utility model to the application enablement model, right? And this application enablement model is really key for service providers and enterprises or whoever is interested by those technology to really innovate new service concepts, right? So there's the notion of new service concept to stay competitive in the marketplace, but at the same time, there's the notion as well of time to market, right? So you have to have your application first so you can really grab a big slice of this market, right? So, and as we all know, as we all understand it, SDN-enabled application can really follow an agile time frame, right? So it's also key in this discussion. So now, having said that, I think we need to reflect a little bit on the dev test challenges, right? And one of them is this one. Now, you are actually faced with a proliferation of software applications that are pushing changes into the infrastructure, right? Pushing new features. And you have also to be able to actually certify those changes with your current networking infrastructure, right? And as we all understand it, the current utility model is just not gonna cut it, because this model would probably require anywhere between 6 to 9 months to complete the certification, right? Oh, by the way, there is something else, right? What do you do with all those networking changes that you still need to deal with, on the physical, logical, but also virtual side, right? So those changes that are occurring in the infrastructure needs to be resynced with the latest and greatest SDN application that you've been developing. So as you can see, there are challenges top down, but also bottom up. So let's dig a little bit more into those challenges and be a bit more pragmatic and practical about them. So first and foremost, I think that we need to recognize that the permutation could be endless. Yes, for example, when you start designing your solution architecture, then you're basically facing a huge list of vendors, right? And as we all understand it, before we get to some industry consolidation, this list of vendors is going to be increasing. Hence, the interoperability matrix is very huge, right? So obviously, as a company, as an enterprise, you're looking at just, one, ideal combination, the one that is the holy grail for your own business. But before you can get there, you're going to have to iterate onto multiple solutions to really get to the best that suits your needs. And with NFV as well, now service providers do have the luxury of instantiating services at will, which also means that, from a permutation perspective, this could be very, very big, right? There is so many services that can pop up, say, at some data center location that are basically servicing some users, then you have no way to predict what the user is going to be leveraging, right? Hence, the full set of permutation for NFV solution needs to be thoroughly tested and validated. Then you get to the performance and scaling issues, right? Obviously, in those new cloud computing infrastructure, the IT rate of change has increased by a ratio of probably hundreds, right? Which is basically gets you to be able to really test your overall infrastructure and environment in such a way that it can really sustain and respond to these kind of changes. So question is, how do you qualify and certify those services in an agile fashion? Well, bottom line is DevOps practice requires automation, right? And that automation can be achieved through two main vectors. The first one is dynamic sandboxing, and the second one is continuous network certification and integration. So let me talk quickly about dynamic sandboxing. So here, very much like in the threat defense space, for example, where sandboxing is really popular, then you have the need for an agile IT infrastructure that really promotes the experimentation with all those technologies, SDNNFV, cloud computing with OpenStack, right? So for example, in Japan, there is the Okinawa Open Lab that invites engineers, researchers, as well as company worldwide, so they can basically work at the facility to develop their SDN solution and cloud computing technologies, right? So in a nutshell, the Okinawa Open Lab will actually offer you those environments because they own the infrastructure and can also manage those environments on your behalf. So moving into the continuous network certification discussion. So obviously here, what you really are looking for is the ability to dynamically create those environments, run your test, take a look at the result of the test, and obviously make changes. And repeat that cycle all over again, iterate until you get to a solution that really meets your business needs. Right, so this is really a key that you need to take into account as well when you're looking at this whole space. So there is, in this situation as well, a very tough problem that I would like to touch on, is really making sure that you're not going to start doing your regression testing before those resources that you're looking for are actually made available to you, right? So here there's the concept of resource reservation and test scheduling that combined together can really achieve continuous network integration and testing. All right, so I think in summary, bringing dynamic sandboxing and continuous network integration together really get you to the ultimate stage, if you will, where you have an environment that is optimized for testing, but that is also very much sustainable, right? Because ultimately what you're looking for is really manage the change all over again and again. So those type of solutions are working well for SDN compatible gears as well as non-SDN compatible gears, where basically you end up managing a mixed environment, ultimately leveraging your legacy assets. Thank you very much for your time.